National Program for Food Security, Mr. Kevin Tekpart. Mr. Kevin Tekpart, it's our pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
And also we have the country representative for Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and talking of no other person other than Mr. Suffyan Koroma. It's our pleasure to have you.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, we have guests joining us here in the Abuja studio, as well as Ibadan Network Center. But let's start off with a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. We've not seen him for some time. He's an agri-economist and is also the Executive Director, West African Green Economic Development Institute, Gregory University, Uturu in Abia State. I'd like to welcome Dr. Emeka Okengo to the program.
Good morning, Nigeria.
And from my Ibadan studio, we have Professor Kuta Yahaya. He's a Professor of Agricultural Extension and Development Communication, University of Ibadan. He also served in the government in the last decade as SSG and Agri-Commissioner, as well as consultant to several development partners and several intervention initiatives. Welcome to the program, Professor Yahaya Kuta.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, so Blessing, we kick start. I would like to start from the man who is the director in charge of food security, a special program for food security in Nigeria. We've had a lot of interventions when we talk about agriculture and food. And when we mention this, a lot come to mind. Can you give us a picture when we talk about food security? What do we really mean?
Thank you very much. Food security actually is a multidisciplinary subject, and it cut across so many MDAs, but agri actually take the lead. When we talk of food security, we are talking of making food available to Nigerians at affordable prices. And you will agree with me that food security plays an important role in national security because they are correlated. If food security is not attained, then the issue of national security becomes a very big problem because, as is said, an empty stomach is always full of annoyance, and therefore communities that are not food secured will definitely be aggressive and can result into many vices that will bring back progress in this country. And therefore it is important that we have progress. It is only on the basis that we have progress that we'll be able to have food security and then secured the nation.
Okay, let's come to the country representative of Food and Agriculture Organization, Mr. Koroma. From your perspective, what should we understand as food security, and what steps do we really need to take to ensure food security?
Thank you very much. As FAO, we have a universal definition of food security that emanates from the World Food Summit 5 years later in Rome. Food security is defined as a situation when all people at all times have physical and economic access to safe and nutritious food to meet their dietary preference and cultural practices for a healthy life. In our definition, we have 4 dimensions of food security. You look at availability, which means food is available; access, which is both physical, you produce it yourself, or you have other avenues to have income to buy it. You have utilization, implies what you actually do with the food. Then you have the issue of stability. Stability now looks at how you grapple with some of the issues that were mentioned in the report, talking about price stability, talking about production stability, talking about risks. So in a nutshell, this is how we characterize food security in the FAO.
All right, let's feel the pulse from Dr. Okengo. Looking at these 4 stages to food, for food, availability, accessibility, utilization, and stability, as you just pointed out, can Nigeria be said to be food secure?
Well, let's even start from the intro that you showed. What you showed wasn't food. What you showed were inputs to food. So probably I think what we should do is to even try to give a definition to what is food. Okay, let's take this very popular staple. Is yam food or is yam a food input?
You tell us.
I'm going to tell you. You see, because it's important you define it. Because what I thought that intro should have shown is that we have started from the farm to the farm gate to the processing to the packaging, okay, and then to the consumption. This is where we are missing it when we're talking about food security. Because except you're able to understand that, yes, it is possible for you to produce food as agriculture, but it is not possible for you to have food security without technology. So if you delink it, this is where you begin to have issues. Like my brother Suffyan has said, he talked about availability, affordability, accessibility, okay, and then there should have been sustainability, because it is yes. Now, because if you're talking about sustainability, this is where you're not talking about volume. It is not all about, okay, in this 1 month we have all the whole yams in the market, and in another 2, 3, 4, 5 months you're not able to get it. This is where the volume and sustainability comes in. Now, having thrown this little thoughts, do we have the capacity in Nigeria to be talking about food security?
All right.
Are we food secure as a country? Can we be food secure as a country if we are not actually now looking at our back end, which is what the intros you've been showing, and the front end, which is actually where you can be able to define if you're able to be food secure? And I can give you in one word. Probably as we go along, if you give me the opportunity, I'll be able to present it, with facts.
Sure.
We are very food insecure, and we remain so for a long time, except we're able to think it through.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kengo. Now let's return to Ibadan, where we earlier introduced Professor Kuta Yahaya, Professor of Agricultural Extension. Now, having listened to the other guests that have spoken, where do you stand? Will food secured? Do we have food sufficiency? What exactly do we mean when we talk about food security for Nigeria and indeed the world?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the elaborate definitions and perspectives of earlier speakers. For me, it is a total desire for every nation to be able to feed our citizens. In Nigeria, we have come a long way. Different policies, different programs, different interventions, different collaborations at national, local, and international level. As heavy investment in agriculture over the years, and you recall, hitherto, Nigeria was predominantly an agrarian society before the advent of petroleum. But when petroleum came, agriculture was jettison. It took the second seat. But thank God, the deliberate effort of the current administration is taking and yielding results. From an import deficit, perpetual import, food import nation, we're now beginning to take stock and look inwards to produce some of the foods that we need, that we have the potential for production. So I look at it from the aggregate of all the actors, from policy makers to the key technical experts at the various levels of agriculture, research and development, to extension and to the farmers. You realize that Nigeria is at crossroad along the value chain. But the deliberate effort now to address the issues of agriculture along the value chain is going to minimize the wastages and the inadequacies associated with our inability to secure ourselves in terms of food security. And as I said, there's a high level correlation between food security and national security. So the deliberative effort that is going on is going to surmount the challenges of the perceived food insecurity question that is being paraded. However, by the time the food producers, the actors along the value chains, and indeed the end users are put on the same level of consideration with adequate budgetary provisions, I think Nigeria is on its way out of the woods.
Thank you, Professor Kuta Yahaya, for that input that you've talked about. Now, let me come to FAO before I go to the Director, Special Program on Food Security. Recently, the World Bank said, looking at our growing population, the level of production is not in line with the population. That is, we're not producing enough food to match the growing population. What is your take with level of food security? And what is the thin line? More often than not, we talk about self-sufficiency. We talk about food security. Are there differences? What is the thin line between that? And what is the status of Nigeria in terms of food production? Looking at the various interventions, what do we need to do to escalate that, to make sure that we are secure in that very area?
Thank you very much. It is very important to note that, yes, food production has not been able to catch up with population growth. So yes, there is a food deficit. But besides the general food deficit, the government has made tremendous effort. I mean, it started with as a matter of fact, with the National Program for Food Security, which was dubbed a Special Program for Food Security over 20 years ago. And FAO worked with them to design this program using South-South cooperation and domestic expertise. This program has gone to a point where it has made a lot of gains, which others have built on. One of the critical things that we noticed is that at least over the last decade, there has not been much policy reversals. And the World Bank pointed to that because in a lot of countries, when regime changes, they reverse the policy of the previous regime. Here we have seen a continuum of the policy. As a matter of fact, there is an enhancement in terms of going beyond the agricultural transformation policy to the agricultural promotion and green initiative. But agriculture is a very, very difficult objective. It requires continuous review, continuous monitoring, continuous investment. And it is not just looking at the production. What we are trying to focus now on in FAO is on the enablers, on the environment, the enabling environment to make sure that all these policies are linked to the smallholder farm, to the smallholder farmers. Link them across the value chain. Look across the horizontal aspects of the value chain, not just look at cassava within the framework of cassava, but what do you do with cassava? I mean, it has industrial uses. Why not exploit those uses? Unless you create that demand. You see, most of what we've been doing is looking at supply side issues. We have to look now at demand side issues, where what are the other uses? Why don't we have industries to take advantage of food? FAO, we have a program that is based on zero food loss and waste, where we believe everything in any food can be utilized. And this is also part of the Zero Hunger Challenge, one of the pillars of the Zero Hunger Challenge. So these are some of the areas in which we need to focus on. Now, we are working with the government in looking at some of the regulatory environment, putting in place food safety. It's a very, very critical element, especially for the domestic market and for export market. We have worked with the Food Safety Management Committee in collaboration with USAID. We assisted the government to create a legislation in there. We worked with the government to put together food security and nutrition strategy, which has 8 priority areas that are part and parcel of the agricultural promotion policy. We are also working on several other value chains in terms of using for example, we have a project on aquaculture and fish value chain, which is built on the fact that you engage youth farmers to provide the fingerlings using cassava products for fish farming. So there are a host of other things, but then there is also much more critical we have 3 looming critical issues here. We have the issue of the fall armyworm, which is a major disease affecting maize. Maize is one of the priority crops that the government has targeted. We have the issue of the tuta absoluta, which is on tomato, which almost ruined the tomato industry. Then we have the issue of the avian influenza, which is affecting the livestock sector. So all of this together, you see, so it becomes a kind of multifaceted challenge that has to be dealt with in a continuous process. Now, what is a critical element there is a question of proper coordination. We are happy to see that the Ministry of Agriculture has revived its project coordination unit that needs to review all projects that are going on in the country. And we hope that this unit needs to be capacitated to be able to design programs around what is going on, and also to exploit the linkages between not just the agricultural sector, but industry as well.
So what is the link between food security and food sufficiency? More often than not, we talk about this. And you know.
Well, food self-sufficiency is often linked to the fact that you can produce enough food for yourself based on your own domestic comparative advantage. And there is no clear link. You can be, what is food self-sufficiency? Basically, if you look at the mathematical equation of it, it is basically you look at production equal consumption to some degree. But
thank you very much, Mr. Koroma. Let's get back to the Director, National Program for Food Security. Now, so much has been done and so much will still be done in the areas of programs, policies, and also other areas of strengthening the agricultural sector, alongside what the value chain should be to actually define or maybe put in aggregate now what we're trying to, Cliff was trying to ask earlier, food security and that of food sufficiency. Now, where are we? There are so many enablers that have been triggered, really. Where exactly is Nigeria in this area of strengthening what we have? And like to use your word, a food secured nation is a nationally secured nation.
Thank you very much, Eugenia.
My name is Blessing.
Blessing, thank you, sorry. Let me say that for the first time in the history of this country, that a regime is continuing with what it made on ground. The agricultural transformation agenda of the former government of Jonathan did quite well, and when this regime came, they continued with it. I think we need to actually applaud the government for, you know, continuing with the program. And based on this, the government actually came up with the green alternative, and this is to consolidate on the gains that have been achieved over the years. And the policy document is actually taking a holistic look at the agricultural sector itself, so that we'll be able to make more progress and close the gaps that have been observed over the years. Like it rightly said, before the discovery of oil, agriculture actually was the mainstay of this economy. But when we got oil, we jettisoned agriculture, and because we are seeing money, thinking that this money will continue. But history has now shown us that the oil itself will finish one day, and that we have something. And agriculture will never finish. Agriculture will make agri, and so also will continue with agriculture. And that's why the government of the day is putting emphasis on agriculture as an alternative to oil. And sincerely speaking, if the rate at which government is, you know, developing the agriculture, if we continue in the next 20 years, I believe the issue of food security will become a thing of the past. Because at the moment, just like a doctor, the Emeka said, what he said that he saw there is not food. Actually, it is food, but what it needs is processing. We need to process this food to other aspects that, you know, to ensure we extend the shelf lives of what we saw on what we saw.
So what kind of intervention are we getting? Now, we still have high cost of food. If we're to go by the 4 indicators of accessibility, affordability, and availability, why do we still have high cost of increase despite all this intervention? What is your program doing to actually address some of those areas that you have all talked about?
Thank you very much. You know, the cost of food is determined by so many factors, including the value of the money, including smuggling. You know that Nigeria, Nigeria feeds most of the West African countries. If you go to Kano, the loan market in Kano, you will see trucks from Benin Republic, from Niger, from Chad, from even Central Africa, So that's why we have high cost of food items. And because of the value of our naira, the safer that is being used by most of our neighbors has, improved in terms of value because our own money has gone down. And therefore, these countries, are coming into Nigeria to mob. Well, it is, as far as I'm concerned, it is positive for the farmers. But again, it is negative because the farmer, as far as the farmer is concerned, he wants to make a return on his investment. And therefore, he's seeing prices. And therefore, there is the temptation for the farmers to sell, and because of the attraction from the high prices we are seeing. So the issue of high prices certainly is an issue that is determined by so many factors, not by just availability of food alone. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Take part. We'll now go to Dr. Okembu, because we're talking about agriculture in its connectivity. How connected are the plants? Because it's a process. You talked about moving from farm through a technology-driven value chain to consumption. And we have input from, we have several educational institutions, research institutions. Hardly in any university you don't study agriculture. We have College of Agriculture. How coordinated are the activities towards ensuring that Nigeria has enhanced food for security?
Thank you very much, Cliff. I think first, let us even identify what the challenges are. Because sometimes we glance over this thing. Nigeria is an agriculture. Oh, we made so much money from agriculture. Yes, we did. But it also made us extremely food insecure.
How do you mean?
Because by the time we were talking about Nigeria gaining so much from agriculture, lands that were supposed to have been used for food production were used for cash crop production. And it wasn't consumed locally. It wasn't our game. It was the buyer's gain. And how that started was all the lands in your villages where you had the palm plantations were where your parents and grandparents used to grow their food. And as they took that land, they lost the capacity to grow the amount of yam that could have made them, self-sufficient, and then be able to now spread this volume towards value. Because it is only when you have volume that you can now begin to talk about the allied infrastructure. Second, everybody keeps talking about, farmers in Nigeria. And then you have a country, or more developed countries like Netherlands, that has little or no land. And they're exporting, trillions of tons of food from very limited land space. And then less than 2, 3, 4, 5% of the population is actually involved in this chain. I'm just trying to get to a point.
Yeah.
So it is not about you having 80,000 or 100,000 smallholder farmers. It is about you having 80,000 hectares of land that you can actually now correlate in producing facilities or foods or inputs that you can now begin to value process. Now, you come to your village blessing or mine. This person is planting ose and suka. This person is planting plantain. This person is planting this. And FAO says, okay, we want to put in a processing mill here. And by the end of the day, you're not able to do that because the cost of energy, is consumed. The cost of packaging is consumed. And all that. What's my point? It's important that as a country, when we want to begin to tell ourselves, let's even define what is food. You had tea this morning.
I've not.
Okay. At least I was offered tea. That's why I made that assumption. And when she said to me, do you want tea or coffee? And I said, green tea. Is that not food?
It is food.
Everybody's talking about turmeric. This can cure cancers. This can cure this. We must be able to delineate what we call our traditional foods. Blessing takes me to somewhere in her village and they bring this big mold of pounded yam. What are you looking into that plate? You're looking at high-grade pharmaceutical starch. You're looking at probably yam flakes. You're looking at probably even food for your animals. Exactly. So until you get it, the last time we had this conversation about yam, I think we took a bet. And I said,
how do you correlate this?
The correlation has to be first, your technology. That's the first thing. The first thing you need in food sufficiency is technology. The second thing you need, depending on which way you want to go, is now applying this technology into technologically driven food production. This is where you have a little bit of genetic modifying and all that. Or your, of course, what we're doing in Nigeria, your rain-fed. If you're going to be doing rain-fed and land-based, you will be most delineating land. This is where volume of land comes into play. It's important, okay? It is only after that, my brother, if you now start talking about belts. If you want to plant cassava, for you to be able to make cassava sustainable, you must be able to define the volume that runs your production chain and runs your processing chain, so that what you get up in the times of storage is able to take it into the next production cycle. That is the only way you can be able to ensure that in the beginning of the cassava harvesting season, you can buy a kg of gari at 1 naira, and at the end of that, what you call your off-season period, you can actually still buy it at 1 naira. This is where volume comes in. So the correlation has to do, first, my brother, you must delineate one, what you want to produce, and then be able to put volumes against it. 2, it must be driven by clear research outcomes and research programs. 3, you must be able to identify the technologies. 4, you must be able to identify the support, and this is very critical. What roles are your dams playing? What roles are your farms playing? What roles are your this playing? What roles are your that playing? My brother, Kevin had talked about, that it is cross-cutting. Now, what is the role of Ministry of Science and Technology in what we're talking about? What is the role of Ministry of Education in what we're talking about? What's the role of Ministry of Water Resources in talking about? If you do not get these people together, and then you leave agriculture to start running, they are going to be doing what can't happen. And let me tell you what it is. Everybody says, oh, we can use agriculture policies that are working. They are not working. I am in that sector. Farmers are not getting seeds when they should get it. Those who get it don't have any information of what to do with it. Farmers are going to the markets to go and buy pesticides and insecticides, and they are using it without anybody oversighting them, because the Ministry of Agriculture is overreached with its extension workers. And even those they have don't even have the proper capacity to be able to move in tandem with the new technologies that are being introduced. So this is what the problem is.
All right, thank you very much, which is a good way to now take the next question to our guest in Ibadan, Professor Yahaya Kuta. We've talked about so many things here, but of great importance is the area which you are your experts. That's the area of agricultural extension, which is one key area. Lack of that or paucity of such extension services is stalling what we need to do with agric really in the country.
Well, I agree with that submission, but to a large extent, I think there is something that is happening in the agricultural extension and agricultural sector in Nigeria that is coming up positively. For the first time in the history of this country, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture is coming up with a national policy on agricultural extension and call all the stakeholders across Nigeria, from the universities to agricultural development projects to policymakers at the federal ministries and states, to come and look at the policy on the way forward for agriculture in Nigeria. I think that's commendable. So agricultural extension is taking its front seat in terms of policy drive, initiation, and the future of galvanizing all the actors in the agricultural sector, because no matter how much is research is generated, if it is not communicated appropriately to the end users, it becomes useless. So that is why agricultural extension is critical and vital for the success of agricultural initiatives. Let me give a very good example that will generate some concern. In Nigeria today, you are talking about capacity. Capacity in terms of manpower development that will drive the agricultural sector to compare with the rest of the world. Today, we have so many universities in Nigeria, but the number of young people, by the way, the global population will hit 10 billion by 2050 according to projections. Nigeria population will double by 2040. And if nothing deliberate is done, young people that constitute about 60 to 65% of this population are veering off, and the aging population of agricultural farmers will give way to nobody to succeed them, because there is no incentive and young people are not deliberately being encouraged to take on to agriculture. In the 2015 entry examination, or the UTME in the exam, to the University of Ibadan, about 50,000 candidates applied. Only 1.9% of this population aspired to read agriculture, including agricultural engineering, veterinary medicine, and general agriculture, and all other fields in agriculture. That does not paint a good picture for Nigeria. The former executives, registrar of JAMB, in a lamentation that the University of Lagos, they received about 100,000 applications for those who want to read medicine, only for vacancies that are available only for 100 candidates. How can everybody aspire to be a medical doctor if there's no food on the table? That's the picture that you have. So for us, the deliberate effort of the current administration in its policy drive of reducing food imports and encouraging agricultural extension, and if you look at the Mr. President's speech, is deliberate about agricultural extension. And if you look at the Minister of Agriculture, every point in time is driving agricultural extension. This is the first time that the agricultural extension is coming to the front burner. Hitherto, people who do not have specialty in agricultural extension, either communication, rural sociology, rural development, administration, even psychology, even human ecology, that the extension provides, will be parading themselves as extension professionals at policy level and at implementation level. That does not augur well for agriculture. But now that the Minister of Agriculture is in the driver's seat to put agricultural extension into the front burner, there is hope, and there is going to be policy direction where all the actors, from research to the key stakeholders in the academia and the policy actors, will come together so that they can compare notes and see how they can drive these agricultural interventions to the logical conclusion. So that even development partners, like you said, like other actors, like FAO, will see that Nigeria is united in its policy drive, and the policy somersault that has affected the sector in the past is no longer an issue. We now have policy continuity, but integration of agricultural extension into policy dialogue, into policy initiatives, is going to drive agriculture to the next level.
We're still with you, Professor Yahaya, because you painted a picture that is not quite encouraging with regards to those applying to read agriculture. And you are in the institutions there. What do you think is the main issue, the main drawback for youth not identifying with agriculture? Because we're talking about transiting from traditional agriculture to agric as a business. What do we need to do to really stimulate the interest of the younger generation to key into this?
Well, the good news is that, as acknowledged, what is good is good. The former Minister of Agriculture came up with the initiative on agripreneurs, engaging young people in agriculture, which the Prime Minister of Agriculture started, and being driven by International Institute for Tropical Agriculture, IITA. IITA, as you know, marked its 50th anniversary just a couple of months ago. The minister was there. The former president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, is the IITA ambassador, and that he watched what young people are doing. When Akiumi, the former minister and the president of African Development Bank, came to commission the Akiumi Center for Agripreneurs, and that Chief Obasanjo was amazed about what he saw young people doing in agriculture, including a medical doctor who dropped the stethoscope to get involved in agriculture and is doing excellently well. Some of them are today Nigerian ambassadors in terms of agricultural export. And some of them, the greenhouse technology that they are initiating, they are doing excellently well. Some of these youths have gone to turn around some of facilities that have been moribund, that have been abandoned even by some state governments, and they are doing excellently well. So if you look at that, what is happening in IITA today, driving the agripreneur policy of getting young people, irrespective of their background, whether they don't have background in agriculture, they give them induction course for some months, and they support them to go and practice. So with that attractive initiative now, if all the 36 states of Nigeria will key into what IITA has initiated, in collaboration with the Prime Minister of Agriculture. Because what is happening like in Israel is triangulation of agriculture. At the apex, you have the policy by the Minister of Agriculture. At the bottom, you have extension interacting with the farmers. So the basic thing that the Minister of Agriculture is doing is policy initiative, enforcement, regulations, and standardization. So if we can restrict ourselves to that and get extension moving and get these young people, give them technology to support them, you cannot expect a young graduate, for God's sake, to go back to the village to go and be using the hose and the drudgery associated production system that his grandfathers and forebears used. But with the new technologies that are coming up now along the value chain, is going to make it easier for young people to get attracted into agriculture. And IITA has started it. So I challenge all the 36 states to come to IITA and see what is happening in IITA collaboration. And many universities today that are offering courses in agriculture, how many of them can boast of budgetary provision to support provision of tractors and other mechanization facilities that will make agriculture attractive to young people? Nil. Many of the universities are poorly funded. So if funding to agricultural faculties in the universities, in polytechnics, in colleges of education, in colleges of agriculture are supported deliberately, is going to enhance attraction for young people. But you can't expect a young person who aspired to also do certain things as other people in other places, you expect him to go and carry hoe. How is he going to cope? When his mates are in high-brow breedings in the banks, in Security Exchange Commission, exchanging notes, exchanging social media messages about how they are flying. So we need to be deliberate. We need to create an enabling environment for young people to be attracted to agriculture. Otherwise, the picture for the future is not only dangerous, but a threat to human and food security as a whole.
We'll come back to the studio here.
Because, you know, part of the theme for this year is change the future of migration, at least to stop them moving into droves
of course,
to
yes.
other parts of the world, and also to invest in food security and rural development.
Of course, yes, because if you don't really, get the whole thing, the whole sector going, restructuring it to where we should be, because we're in a modern age, this is a digital age, age driven by technology. And I come to Food and Agriculture Organization because building capacity along that line, making it attractive is one way to go. And you have to partner with the country. I'm sure you have programs lined out in that direction. What is Food and Agriculture, United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization doing in that direction to ensure that Nigeria, transits from the traditional way of doing things to the modern way in terms of agriculture, looking at what obtains in our institutions of learning and in various communities in terms of agriculture and farming?
Yes, the discussion has been what is actually critical to move agriculture forward. My colleague here talked about technology. It is very interesting. When I came here, one of my first intervention was a project we have in a place called Jere in Kaduna State, which involves the private sector and several other UN agencies. And we were trying to demonstrate to the young farmers how to preserve tomatoes. And after the process, what they ask is, why don't you send it to us in our smartphones? So that we could continuously use it. And so the technology is already there. It is how we make it effective. And that could also reduce the cost of extension, because having physical people there it is difficult to have one person with knowledge of all the farming systems in a particular place. But with the technology that you mentioned, you could have all of that in one simple smartphone. But we need to also bring down the cost of the technology. We need to bring down the cost of connectivity. So these are all linked to agriculture. These are some of the things we call the enablers. So these would spur, and some of these developments of these platforms, these are things that youth do in other parts of the world. We could bring in those experiences here, because it is not necessary to say youth in agriculture means he has to have a hoe to go and dig, but create the enabling environment, facilitate the enabling environment, provide things like, now we are trying to work on an early warning system and a market information system for Nigeria, which is one of the key issues identified in the growth growth recovery plan, and in the promotion policy itself. And we are trying to see what is available, who is doing it. It is all very, very young people who are involved in collecting price information, collecting market information. How do you consolidate that? Because this is one of the critical things here in Nigeria, which is lacking in terms of information, appropriate information to farmers when and how they need it for themselves. So we are trying to work with it. We do, most of what we do is with the federal government. The federal government is in the driving seat. We try also to reach out at the state level. We do work with the state. And it is critical in a country like Nigeria to have the states buy in and have their interventions so that we could be able to drive things from the federal to state or state to federal and see which ones are working and which ones we can upscale. But there we have so many interventions. I cannot begin to name all of them.
Well, it's okay. We'll thank Mr. Koroma for that input. Well, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll look at the input or contribution from Nigerians through our Twitter handle at NTAGMN in a moment.
Hot and dry condition causes the body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another. Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection and an invincible icy feel for super cool confidence. Use Dettol Cool.
Another edition of TV Guide magazine is out with revealing accounts of trending stories. With the dwindling oil revenue, he says there is no reason to worry.
We strongly believe that culture is Nigerians' new oil, and we're going to show that by creating wealth, our art and culture will be a statement for all of us.
Our cover story is on Otumba Olusegun Munchewe, Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture. For upcoming TV presenters, Elegant Elizabeth Banu tells you what it takes. A peep into the activities of the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative, a mandate being fulfilled. A trip to the Yankari Games Reserve at Safari in Bauchi State brings you closer to nature. And the Oshun Osogbo Festival, our culture, our pride. Professor Adiku, the Vice-Chancellor, University of Abuja, tells us what it means to manage a university, plus our regular features, star profile, media issues, relationships, young minds, entertainment, sports, and lots more. Pick your copy now at the vendors or at every NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, still your indispensable companion.
It's about that time. States across the country coming together for one purpose, one goal. They are young, they are solution providers. The NTA ETV Children's Expo 2017, holding at the NTA Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja, with the theme Renewable Energy, Industrialization, Arts and Agriculture as tools to bring Nigeria out of economic recession, with sub-themes post-harvest processing and preservation, and using arts and crafts to promote tourism. Date 22nd to 27th October 2017. This expo is open to ages 6 to 12 years for junior category and 13 to 18 years for the senior category. It's about the Art, Science and Technology Expo. For sponsorship consideration, please call the following numbers.
Thank you for holding on there. The program is still Good Morning Nigeria, and our focus is enhancing food security in Nigeria. Now, before the break, Cliff did indicate that we have reactions already from Nigerians watching this program, and we'll quickly run through the tweets in a moment. From Sadara is this tweet: we need to imbibe the spirit of going back to the land. Our youth need to know that money is now residing in land. Holes are generating millions of naira now. Whether we don't want the holes, we want this technology. Really.
Well, Sunny Rising, government should create an enabling environment for farmers via provision of incentives, grants, and quarantine the systematic political farmers. Oh, systematic political farmers. He added that the right policies should give access to the real farmers to benefit instead of political farmers.
Now, from Delay is the streets: climate change, population explosion, insecurity, and lack of capital and the technology are the challenges Nigeria is facing in the area of food production.
And Saidu ML says making sustainable agriculture a national priority will be a good start. We have to be self-sufficient.
Jax is a name, Twitter handle for this person. Food scarcity is a major cause of hunger, whereas hunger is the major cause of anger and even political agitations. Sufficient food is equal to unity in Nigeria.
And Ibrahim Usman says food security could be tackled by good government policies that are well monitored by private sector and other organizations deemed for a purpose.
Michael tweets, politicians over the years have hijacked the government's incentives, loans and grants, thereby leaving the real farmers stranded.
And Jamil says overpopulation of white-collar workers leaving rural areas undeveloped and mono-economic situation of the country are some of the causative agents of our not moving forward or making the best in agriculture.
Ibrahim Panti says the demand for cash in hand and bank accounts seems to be the priority. That's where the problem lies. To enhance food supply, more work has to be done, such as storage facilities, modern farm mechanisms, and improved seedlings.
And Sadara rising again, we have investors in oil industry. To what extent many who are interested in agriculture supported by government, more needs to be done in this direction. Again, supply of fertilizer is poorly managed. The big boss still on rampage in agricultural sector. Peasants are not adequately supported.
All right, from Bello is this tweet. Food insecurity now. Food insecurity is the cankerworm bedeviling Nigeria, but with the help of God, we shall overcome it. Diversification is key. Now, the NAPI and e-wallet introduced by erstwhile government should be sustained to quarantine the system of political farmers.
And Law Alpha says governments should, as a matter of necessity, build storage facilities for the many quality foods Nigerians produce all over the country. The problem of food insecurity is not just limited to Nigeria alone. Rather, it is a worldwide phenomenon. It mustn't be treated with kid gloves. Government should therefore make reasonable number of tractors available in 774 local governments in Nigeria to encourage the real farmers.
Okay, Akinboyewa has a street. Government of all levels in Nigeria should invest in interdisciplinary research to enhance and sustain our food system. And
Edith Izu Obano says marketing board should be revisited for food to get to the common man. Too much talk, too much plan, and no result in the life of masses. I think that will take us to Mr. Tekpat. Talking about too much talk, too much plan, and no result in the life of the masses. And also the area of cascading to the rural populace where you have most of us. Of course, yes. Well, can you react to this, please?
Thank you very much. In fairness to the government, I think government is doing quite a lot to ensure food security. And it's not something that can be achieved within the twinkle of an eye. Like I said, the euphoria of oil, actually robbed the Nigerians from the gains of agriculture. But I think that now that this government is very serious, I think we'll begin to see changes. Just like he said, I believe there will be less talk and more to be seen on the ground. I'm sure, because that is the focus of government now. If you look at what government is doing, just like Professor Kuta said, Hinteto, there was no functional department of extension, but now with the reorganization of the ministry, we now have a functional department of agri-extension. This is kudos to the government, and because you know that extension actually is the engine room of any agricultural development. Any research that cannot be interpreted by the extension worker, that research remains unadoptable. And I'm sure the policy also that is also being concluded the policy on agricultural extension that is also being concluded will add value to agricultural production and enhance productivity. There are other measures that government is taking to ensure and rather to attract youth to agriculture.
Okay.
Yes, there are the issue of training. There are particularly on extension, private extension workers that can, you know, provide extension to farmers. I'm sure by the time the policy on extension come up, they have a specific role to play in enhancing extension services. There are also, you know, the present approach to agricultural development in Nigeria is the value change approach. And, you know, along the value, there are a lot of jobs that can be created. And that is why government is putting emphasis on value, on the value addition. If you go across the country now, there are a lot of processing fact plans that are ongoing. Some have been completed, both large-scale plans like Labana, like Umza in Kano, like Ebonyi Rice, like Kwara Rice, and also Lagos. And then there are the small and medium one. All of this, if we aggregate them together, you will see that agri is being pushed forward. And I'm sure we'll move forward from now onward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Was earlier on, Dr. King mentioned area for other infrastructure, power, some other sustain. What we have presently certainly is not enough. What other things are being done to actually ameliorate areas where such intervention actually speed up action, especially in rural communities? Some of those things are located maybe state capitals, and we have the bulk of the farmlands, and even this army of unemployed youth start across the local government areas.
Blessing, I was going to even tackle take a maker
okay,
on
anyway,
that,
we'll
on the
return to
political farmers, you know, because they mentioned in the tweets we have to take into account the observation of Nigerians, of politicians over the years who hijacked the government's incentives. A lot of government give incentives, but they're hijacked. Do they penetrate, you know, to the real farmers?
It is because the interventions are also political. If you look at most of the intervention that we've had in agriculture, I hate to say this, but it usually comes during election periods. You want us to be very fair to each other. And because you don't have the infrastructure to be able to receive it, and please, when I'm talking about power, I'm not talking about NEPA. No, there is biomass. Okay? A lot of these farms can generate their own energy. I was talking about energy. But let's talk about these political farmers. Yes, a lot of people have also laundered, you know, money by going to now establish, you know, farms. You have a lot of Nigerians who have these huge farms. How do you ramp it up? You ramp it up by now aggregating. What we have is a lot of disaggregation. And this is why I said we must be able to define what we have in Nigeria. Even the so-called local farmers that you have, to what extent do you have resources that can be able to help them plant in what soils? Has there been any national, you know, soil investigation statistics that have been done? Do we have any national soil data?
Have we done all of this? That's
no, the answer is a large no. And all you need to do is very simple. Fortunately, we have FOA, but there are also in other contending frontiers. And then it is what you tell FOA to do for you that they do for you.
FAO, you mean?
Yeah, yes. If we go to them and say, listen, help us do this very simple thing. Can you be able to help us first? Let's even understand why we have yams from this particular area not being able to survive more than 2 months of storage, no matter what it is. Does it have to do with the soil? This is where your soil investigation comes into play. But let me go a little further. If you do not aggregate, like Kevin has said, we have a lot of disaggregation. What you need to do is that for an extension officer, my brother had mentioned it, we can use technology. But when you don't have technology, if we had resource centers in every community where you had these farmers gather together to say, okay, fine, you know what? We are going to be planting red radish or turmeric or ginger or this or so, but we're not going to be consuming this thing. It's going into a pharmaceutical industry in England. We're going to be dedicating maybe 10 or 20 hectares of the land available to us as a community to be able to earn 2,000 pounds that we can now put into yam. But our yams we are not even going to be selling in the market. We're going to enter into a relationship with the Pharmaceutical Institute of Nigeria to be able to see if they can convert our yam to pharmaceutical grade starch. Now, you have a village where you have a lot of farmers and then herdsmen are coming. And we say, okay, let's have an integrator where every waste that we get from our farms, I give a typical example with corn. What you consume in corn ultimately as human is less than 0.7% of the whole total makeup of corn and stock. The other ones, what do? You turn it into, you put it somewhere, burn it up, and then even start putting emissions or methane into the air. But you can also convert those things into fodder or hay by just adding 1 or 2 vitamins, and then you stack it up for these animals that come. So what do? Herdsmen come, and you say to them, just move your cattle into that integrator. We have enough food for you to be able to stay here for another 2 or 3 or 4 months for us to now decide where it is you're going to. You are now integrating. You are now harmonizing. You are now building national harmony. You are now bringing agriculture into your national security, network. But what do? You have a farmer who probably has 10 or 20 or 50 or 60, seedlings or yams. He takes it to his farm to go and plant it. You now have an itinerant header or somebody who walks across there with his cattle, and the thing gets eaten up. And they say, oh, farmer herdsman clash. Before you know it, 100 lives are lost. So until we also stop doing political interventions in agriculture, I don't like to hear this word policy. Policy is talk. Policy is intent. You must be able to support policy with a program. You must be able to support the program with action. Your program is where the plans are. Your action is where your funding comes in. This is where you must, blessing my sister, begin to look at food as nutrition. Nobody eats food anymore as food. In other climes of the world, you can eat a biscuit, just one biscuit, and you have gotten all the whole nutrition that you need. When they started the food school feeding program, we had a conversation, and I said, why are we not fortifying milk? Why are we not fortifying biscuits? When you go to schools, because a lot of these people you're going to be giving food, do you know the capacity? Do you know the hygiene? Where are we going to be getting water? Where are the kitchens going to be? But with corn alone, you can actually now start producing biscuits. We can actually now start producing yogurts. And when a child has probably some liter, some quantity of that biscuit and that yogurt, you'd have gotten all your nutrition intake. What's my point? We must move from food security to nutrition-based food security. In that way, it is no longer about volume. I keep mentioning it. It becomes value. And then when government says we are going to be releasing funds to farmers, in one bit they say to you, oh, today they are farmers, the next day they are miners. What are the statistics? What are the training? You now say you have extension officers. Now, to do what? With what access do they have? There are locations in this country, blessing, that you have shown it on NTA. The people had produced the food. There were no roads to take out the thing. So why wouldn't you just take one little modular machine to be able to convert whatever it is into powder or flake or whatever?
Okay, Dr. Okengulu, let's, because we're on the home stretch now for this conversation. Recently, FAO too also released some information about 7.1 million people now severely food insecure across 4 countries. Nigeria, of course, is inclusive. Now, we've talked about so many aggregates to actually begin to tidy up. Where do we begin to strengthen ourselves in terms of pursuing food security, food sufficiency, and also the nutritious aspect that you talked about? Looking at your findings.
Yes. Well, the report you're mentioning focused a lot more on the Northeast, where we looked at the whole, and also linked to the Lake Chad. Our approach, Emeka mentioned a gist of it, we call it nutrition-sensitive agriculture, where you look at the nutritional aspect. And this is what we are trying to do in relief in the Northeast, where we have been able to reach at least 100 million IDPs, returnees, in which we provide them with seeds, vegetable seeds, nutritious seeds, improved seeds, and then we also provide them with training, because this program would give them sufficient food and income for 6 months, because you don't know what the situation would be like. We also complemented that with some livestock, some ruminants, some goats, which we provided to female-headed households. So these are some of the interventions that we focused on specifically for that particular situation.
Okay, the director, the food program, where do we begin to redirect such energies that the federal government is pushing out in terms of policies, even though Dr. King said he doesn't like the word policy, there has to be definite programs. How is this cascading to the subnational governments?
Thank you very much. The federal government actually is emphasizing on working directly with the farmers at the rural areas, and it is actually done in collaboration with the states. You know, agriculture falls under the concurrent list, and you are aware that the farmers actually reside at the state level. And so whatever the federal government is doing it in collaboration with the states. And therefore, I believe the states are keen in. If you go to states like Kebbi, the issue of youth farmers, if you go to states like Kebbi, you find out that majority of the farmers now are youth. I had the privilege of working in Kebbi for some years, and I interacted well with farmers, particularly the young farmers. And what most of them do tell us that time was that they actually waste their time, you know, pushing water in the town. But by the time they went back home, they realized that agriculture pays, and a lot of them are
so there are more engagement for young persons now. You're taking
exactly, okay. exactly.
All right, Tech Part, we other gentlemen, we have some tweets. Quickly, we'll run through them because we must go now. We must round up on this conversation.
Well, we could have loved to get comments from Prof, but that's the much we can take from him. Let's round off with these comments from Nigerians. I will have Omobolaha. Until now, Nigerians only do peasant farming. Government must confront the problem frontally. Apart from the Anchor Borrowers program, private sector is key. What we are not doing right is, over time, we are plagued with leadership problem. How do farmers get their produce across to urban cities without good roads?
So you mentioned that. Well, from this Twitter handle, agribusiness, the small-scale food processing entrepreneurs should be encouraged and supported, and also to ensure farmers get fertilizers and animal feed at good prices. Improved and hybrid seedlings should be made available to farmers, and also most agricultural produce perish before they get to consumers due to poor road network access.
And Bello Jamiu says, I am optimistic that we can tackle this by the effectiveness of the Green Alternative Program launched by the President of Nigeria.
Omo is it's saddening that Nigeria with vast agrarian land is faced with hunger. Oil discovery now appears more of a curse than blessing. Not now.
Not your own blessing. Sakiru says transportation, storage facilities and packaging enhance food security in Nigeria. The private sector should be fully active in ensuring food security by supporting farmers in groups. Farmers need funds.
Solo says selfish individuals who do not believe in sharing an equal distribution of food and other resources. May God deliver us from these people.
Dele Jackson Solomon, Jack Solomon says, God has blessed the world, Nigeria by extension, with enough food. But unfortunately, the bulk of the food is in the hands of the few.
Engineer Abdullah says we need to mechanize our farming. Farmers should be able to access loans, and agri-extension services should be revived.
Agribusiness says Ministry of Agriculture, that should be at the forefront of food security campaign, has been paying lip services to Nigerians. There should be control of food prices in the market. Government and private sector should participate to ensure quick access to food.
Edith Izuobano says until every citizen can eat with satisfaction, with minimum stress, federal government actions will be hopeless. We can't tackle the problem of food insecurity without doing the basics. Go to the hinterlands and see the decay of our road network. How do we move? Actions of government must be coordinated so that programs transcend into purposeful realities.
And Olayiwale Musbao says the high cost of farming by local farmers and market problem needs to be addressed. Government should reduce tax on equipment and incentivize acquiring land for farming is also discouraging.
Those are some of the tweets. We'd like to appreciate our guests. We'd like to thank Dr. Emeka Okengu, an agri-economist and also Executive Director, West Africa Green Economic Development Institute, Gregory University of Turu in Abia State. Thank you for coming on the program.
Privilege. Thank you very much.
We'd also like to appreciate Dr. Koroma. Yes.
Well, actually, you're talking about Suffyan Koroma, the country rep of United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. We thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Of course, we go to Ibadan, where we had Professor Kuta Yahaya. Professor Kuta Yahaya, a professor of agricultural extension and development communication, University of Ibadan. We thank you so much for your expertise and contribution to this conversation.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Of course, Kevin, take part. You really took part in this conversation and made the impact of government, felt what government is doing in that direction in terms of enhancing food security. He's the director in charge of the program on food security. We thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting the Federal Ministry of Agri to participate in this program.
Yeah, we're always partners in progress because Nigerians are eager for us to produce more foods and remain on top of food security. We thank you all, gentlemen, for this conversation. And of course, that's where we'll move to our next segment, where we have sports. A lot happening in the sports world. Let's get the sports desk to tell us more.
Nigeria's home-based Super Eagles will know their group opponents for the African Nations Championship CHAN as the Confederation of African